With graphics like that, this guy must work out. Alright folks, so after showing you the first video of measuring, I'm going to kind of take you through step by step. This will be several days scattered over this part of the process. I have the sides and fronts of the drawers, and this is kind of the next detailed step. So what I'm going to show you how to do is to route this edge, and this is a back. So when you're cutting these, I would recommend, especially when I'm this cabinet I'm working on basically has 3 different size drawers, actually 4. Make sure that you label them as you make them. That way you know where they go. It can get a little confusing, especially when your front and your back are only like a half or a quarter inch difference. You'll save yourself a lot of headache by doing that. So this is the side, actually the back. I'll read my own writing. And what we're going to do is I've got this 1/4 inch underlayment that's going to slide right in just like that. So what we want to do is route this edge. That way when we put the pieces together, everything snaps in just right. So what you want to do is set your router table up. I've got a 1/4 inch router bit, and I've got it set to about a 1/2 inch. Set your fence up for a 1/2 inch. Then all you do is just take your board and run it through just like that. I've got a vacuum hooked up. So basically that's what you'll do, is route it along the bottom of all of them. Remember, if you got any funky edges, put them on the bottom, because this part of the cabinet's not going to be seen. This is the bottom of the drawer, so it's totally hidden. So any boogered up edges, try to look at that as you're cutting these and put them towards the bottom. So I'll route all these out, and then I'll show you how to assemble the drawers. So give me a minute. Alright, so as I talked about in my measuring video, usually I goof something up when I'm doing this. And I usually try to make everything fit the opening, and when all else fails, adjust the least expensive material. So this bottom board was like $14 a sheet. This 1/2 inch plywood's like $35 a sheet. So luckily my expensive wood was right. So my sides, this is one of my drawers. So I put my routed edge on. As you can see, all these are routed all the way around. And I made these bottom boards 1 inch off, so my measurements were off. What you have to do is I cut this right in the middle, so it's a 1/4 inch all the way around. And I know that my measurement for this particular shelf, this is the shelf or drawer for your the coffee bar, is supposed to be 19 by 21. And you're going to take a 1/2 off, because remember, you got a 1/4 here and a 1/4 here, and you want your outside diameter to be right. You're making your bottom fit that diameter. So a 1/4 here and a 1/4 here is going to make that a 1/2 off. So basically just take your overall measurement and take a 1/2 inch off. Then when you route your boards a 1/4 inch down, your bottom board should fall right in those grooves. So I haven't put this together yet. Basically, I'll take glue, wood glue, and run it all the way down through here. You can see it's setting flush in there, and we've got about a 1/4 inch up. So I've got it all tacked in. Then you'll take your sideboard and attach it. Hard to do with one hand. There it is. That looks good and tight. It's in the grooves all the way around. Last thing you want to do is get your outside measurement and make sure you're good on that and that you're square. So the overall measurement's 21 by 19, which is what we have. So I'll put wood glue on it all the way around, and then I will use 1.5 inch 18 gauge staples to staple this about 4 times through here on each seam. And then once I put my wood glue in here and get all this together, it'll be good and tight and sturdy. And take your speed angle and put it on the inside just to make sure that you're good and square before you go to stapling. And as you can see there, that's good and square. There's not any gaps. I'll just move that out of the way. So put your wood glue on there all the way around in your routed seam. Shove it in, shove your sides on, put your top on, and then just put you, like I said, about 4 staples right through here. Make sure you're hitting through the wood. I've never had a problem with the shelf falling apart. I use the coated staples, and once they sink in, they're good as gold. You can do some routed edge or box. Use a dado blade and make this into more of a fitted joint here, or finger joint was what I'm trying to find. But for what we're using this for, these aren't going to be heavily used drawers. The type of joints, glue, and configuration I'm using here should be plenty fine to hold these together. So that's how you put your drawers together. So I'm going to assemble all these. We'll go ahead. I've got the sides cut, so all my sides are cut. I've got my kick plate down at the bottom cut out. These are my tall tower sides. I've got 4 of those cut. I've got my sides for my middle of my cabinet, and then for the coffee bar I've got those sides cut. I've got all my routed joints ready. I'll just have to get me another couple pieces of layment, and basically all those are scrapped now. But like I said, it's only about $14 a sheet. That's why it's important. I probably shouldn't have cut these. Usually I take an entire, get my exact measurements that I need, put one drawer all the way together, and then just to make sure my measurements are right. I said cabinet software would probably help with this because it wouldn't be my rough figuring. But you live and you learn. I'll come back and we'll start again once I get all these drawers together. Thanks. Alright, so I thought I'd show you how to put one of these drawers together. Basically, I lay all my 4 sides out. Run a bead of glue down through the seam. Don't have to put a ton in there. As you start with the biggest side, so this is my side. This panel board, I ran the sander around it just to get the burrs off. So I'm going to attempt to do this one-handed. Put one side in. There's your other side. Kind of hard to see as I'm doing it with me holding the phone. Now I got my sides on my front and my back. I'll just put my last piece on. that's it. I've got it glued. All I'll do is make sure my sides are good and even. Line it up. You just put 4 staples. Like so. Do that all the way around. Just make sure you get your corners good and square. Line it up and take your speed angle as you're doing it. Put it inside to make sure that you're good and square. This one's out a little bit. Put it in there, square it up. The bottom's out. You can see it's off. So if you make your cuts good and straight, your box should be square. Just make sure that you're lined up good. You don't have any overlap on the bottom or the top, and then it's flush here, and then staple it as you go around. I got 17 of them to put together. Alright folks, so this is how I assemble them. I get all the facial pieces, all the slats, the 2 sides. Usually I put the bottoms and the tops in there, but since these are kind of made a little different, I'm doing them a little differently. So what I do is I get them all laid out. Like this is all one tower, this is another tower, this is the middle. And then what I do is I lay the sides up. This is the coffee bar. So I started out with this 3.5 inch piece, and I'm using 1.5 inch staples. So I staple it in here and staple it there, which gets my 2 sides up. Then I put my facial pieces on. So this is my bottom 1.5. This is my side 1.5. My top 2 inch. So I got to have enough room for the Formica top to go over, and then my other side. What I do next is, now that I have the top done, I don't put the centers in yet because I'll use a Kreg jig to screw those in. So I get this part done, and then what I do, make sure you line it up to where it's flush along the edge. It'll be a little off, well, mine is a little off, but I'm going to come through and sand this and fill this in. Since it's painted, it's not as important that these match up exactly perfect. If it was stained, you'd want these cuts to be precision, but paint's a little forgiving. So what I do once I get that together is I'll measure from the inside of here to the inside of the other side and get that measurement. Here is 44 5/8, because this is 23-30 seconds. They make the wood, they don't exactly make half or 3/4 anymore. They save a 30-second, which allows them to make more lumber, but makes it a little difficult when you're doing these projects because you're measuring down to that small of a degree, or that small of a measurement. So what I do is get the facial on. I know these are exactly 46 inches, these top and the bottom. So then I just measure what I've got left. I cut me a piece that's 44 5/8. Measure at the top, because you know this is exactly the size that you need it. So you measure the inside, get that measurement, and then you'll use that piece to square this up and tack it on the back. That'll not only help you square the cabinet, it'll also give you a nailer or a screw board to hold the cabinet to the wall. So at this point, I take the cabinet and set it up. And then I take my piece that I cut, which is right here, and I'll use it to make my back. So that'll help me square the cabinet. I'll just staple it in on each side, there and there. That'll get this good and square. I'll use your speed angle to check your corners to make sure the cabinet's flush. Like I said, I usually do this with the bottom and the top, or at least the bottom. But considering this is going to have a stack of drawers over here, and it's only going to have a bottom for half of it, and I'll probably put a divider in here. This is just the way I build my cabinet. So I do get all the measurements and do my exact figuring on my drawers and my doors and my facial pieces, and then all the slats from here on out, I'm just kind of measuring from the finished product to see exactly what size I need. And the big reason for that is considering the lumber's not exact. It's easier from this point out to just measure what you got, build your rough frame, and then measure your pieces from there. So I'll get all the cabinets put together to this point, put all the facial pieces on. This is how I do it. So I'll go ahead and assemble the other three, and then I'll come back and show you a little more about the next steps.
This guy needs to be a poster child for birth control. If you like that video, hit subscribe.